We're going to talk about e-conscience. You know, a lot of the sci-fi visions that we're going to discuss towards the end of this course are more in line with connecting the brain to the cloud and being able to tap to unlimited processing power, unlimited search, all these wonderful things about connecting your brain to the cloud as an extension. We already sort of do it through our phones and through our computers, but having that direct connection and how is that going to change our lives? Fine. That's more of the sci-fi. We're going to get to that and we're going to discuss those things. But in general, I'm talking about applications, real applications. You know, we've talked about how data is going to rat you out. So you better bring your A game in terms of helping the community become better, helping your audience, your clients become a better version of themselves. Because if not, somebody's going to create an app that's going to be able to rat you out and the data is going to speak for itself. In the case of Tom Gruber, which is one of the creators of Siri, he had this great TED Talk. I thought it was interesting that he keeps talking about unlimited memory. And that made me think of e-conscience, because as kids grow and everything gets captured and everything gets documented and there's unlimited memory and all that unstructured data is now searchable and there's algorithms that are making sense of it, you literally can have situations where if you watched this show and you read this book and you went to this conference, then you should be able to connect these dots. And these are the insights that you should have. Now, whether you connected the dots or not, or if you were falling asleep, the algorithm could actually now check that and validate against your actual behavior. If you got that insight and you're not acting accordingly, because once you expand a person's consciousness, it never recovers its original form. So if you are able to track that and validate against daily behavior and you start seeing some inconsistencies and you flag them, that person can come back. I'm guilty of falling asleep in many of my courses when I was a student, and I had to go back and catch up and read the book and ask friends for their notes and compensate. But now you're going to be able to just go back and rewind and figure out and hear it again and again and again and say, I hadn't picked up on that, because the system flagged that you've learned the things that you need in order to solve this problem, but you just don't remember. And I remember that movie, the one about the emotions, the Pixar movie called Inside Out. It represented your core beliefs as 5 glands that were there, very active, but it also had a lot of dead memory that you rarely accessed, that you literally could not access. And I think that's going to change in the future. I think that all that dead memory is now going to become active memory, and you're going to be able to access all that memory. So think about what that means. If you're making all the connections, everything that you see and process and hear and smell, now your entire field of vision, not just what you're putting attention on, not just what you're focusing on, but everything you're absorbing now becomes a part of that possibility, that memory, that algorithm can search and find and determine and scrub. It really offers an amazing possibility to have an e-conscience. You've learned these lessons. Why aren't you applying them? You know better. You've already seen where this type of behavior leads to. And so all of a sudden, I wonder if there's going to be like those cartoons where you have the little devil and the little angel. And now we're going to have a little angel talking in our ear all the time through these connected ear pods, because it's going to figure out things that we should be doing that we're not doing, that we already know the consequences of. And it's going to warn us, this is the consequence. You're not going to have enough cash flow for the end of the month payment for your rent or for your kid's school. Don't do this expenditure. And of course, they're doing it based on data, based on historical, based on all of your expenses. And it's going to be hard to battle those algorithms, because they're going to be right. They're going to be able to measure health impacts. So whenever you smoke or you drink, and don't forget, tomorrow you have that meeting at 9 a.m. and the last time you drank, you showed up late and you were tired and you got called out by your boss. And so, all of a sudden, this persistent memory with the prompting mechanism is going to be really something very different. It also, I think, opens up the possibility for a curriculum and a training and a design. If you give it an intent, all of a sudden it will prompt you for things that you want to learn. So it knows everything that you've absorbed, that you've learned, and it brings you new things. And it searches and it finds the best available teachings on the subject. So I think education is going to be completely redesigned. So this e-conscience is going to be able to know what you're capable of, what you should be able to deliver. It's going to be able to connect the dots and be able to learn all the learnings that you should have learned and make all the linkages that you should have made with the knowledge that you supposedly have. So there's been a lot of studies about what we see, what we hear, through all our 5 senses, what we smell, what we touch, and what we're conscious of. So what we're actually actively processing and digesting and interiorizing. And it's sad, but it's a very small percentage. Remember the rectangle for what we see versus what we're processing. It was literally like a small area, less than 5% of the total rectangle of what we're absorbing. Not to mention the other senses, because it's not like they're contained within each other. Each experience is different and it's providing different points of information. So actually, in this case, you wonder if you're going to have a 24-hour psychologist with you. Is this also part of this e-conscience that I'm talking about? Are you going to have a 24-hour psychologist prompting you and nudging you and reminding you and telling you, your tone is starting to rise, you're starting to get flustered, you're starting, just like you're using the glasses to read if people are flustered, the system is also going to do it to you. And it's going to basically tell you, dude, your heart rate is going up, your blood pressure, your muscles are tensing. This person is clearly getting under your skin. Remember these techniques that we covered last week in your anger management course that I prompted and that you accepted because you were blowing off too much steam with too many people. And remember these techniques and go back to your safe zone, or go back to your calm place, or go back to your blue sky, or whatever it is. And I wonder if you're going to be having that real-time psychological read on everything you're doing in real time, on your actions, on your words, on what you're saying. And you may be with the spouse and you're saying something, and all of a sudden in your ear you hear, oh, that's such BS. Come on, like, really? Are you still there? Haven't we talked about this enough? Can you imagine all of a sudden getting prompted and says, hey, you're falling into old patterns again. We had already kind of passed the stage. You're falling into these old destructive behaviors. Be careful. Change course. Get out of that meeting. Take some air. Breathe. Don't respond. Are these things that we're going to be prompted on? And how is that going to affect our emotional intelligence and our health and our wisdom? In the Matrix, they would just run programs in and you learn how to fly a helicopter, and you would learn how, like, the same thing. But now here you're learning how to literally, you're getting real-time data and interpretation of your actions in the moment all the time. So there's a book I really like called You're Not So Smart, David McRaney. He basically advocates that our memory fills the gaps. We remember something, but it really didn't happen that way. And especially as more and more years pass, you know, when we're telling stories to our kids and our grandkids, if there's somebody in the room that was a friend of ours when we were kids, or that was present, they will turn around and say, that's not how it happened. And they will tell you how it really happened. And you mix things up and you mix and match and you put them together, and your memories of your life, in this book they go into a lot of detail as to why, but your details and your memories of your own life are at best inspired in true events. It's a movie that you told yourself, but that may not necessarily be true. So in other words, we lie to ourselves a lot. What's going to happen with this persistent memory and documentation of our lives? I think we won't be able to lie to each other. Forget about lying to other people, which that's a whole other thing. We're also going to explore that in the video. If it's the end of lying or just the beginning of AI-enabled deception, we will show you both camps, and there's great arguments for both. But right now, you're going to be able to tell if people lie, and apparently, we're going to have the tools to tell if we're lying to ourselves. So yeah, that is part of this 24-hour psychologist speaking in your ear. So the question is, do you think that's real? Do you think that's real, or do you think that's not going to be real? And that's something, when we look at these dystopic futures, we don't see a lot of that, where the world has been abandoned and there's a few that control the future. But we don't see that conscience in your ear all the time. It's keeping you on the narrow path. So you decide, do you believe that in 10, 15 years, we're going to be there, and we're going to be able to really connect the sum learnings of everything that we see, hear, touch, taste, smell? I think that's going to be very positive. I think that we're looking at a renaissance. We really are looking at a very positive time in terms of learning. And for all the dystopic views out there, I want to create a show called White Mirror that has all the positive equivalent scenarios to the dystopic plot lines. And maybe we'll give some examples in this course of White Mirror possibilities. But it's really taking that technology and putting it to the betterment of society, but putting it to good use to become a better version of yourself. And this eCONCIENCE, this 24-hour psychologist in your ear, it sounds weird and it sounds different, but because we're not used to it. Having a system that checks you and a check and balance that you can design and build for yourself, that seems like a great tool to have. Well, like everything else, time will tell. So we shall see you in the next module.